I got into trail running during the pandemic, like a lot of people did. By May of 2022, I was 3 or 4 days a week deep into it, driving out to any green patch I could find within an hour of where I lived in central Pennsylvania. That Saturday, I picked a trailhead I'd never used before, off a county road north of State College. Not a park, just state forest land with a gravel pullout and a wooden sign so weathered you could barely make out the trail name. Something like Buck Ridge, I think. The plan was simple: run out 40 minutes, turn around, run back. I had a small pack with water and my phone, no GPS watch, which in hindsight was stupid. My phone had a compass app and half a bar of signal in the parking lot, and I figured that was enough. The first mile was fine. Nice pine smell, that damp early May smell where the ground is still soft from spring rain. I was hitting a decent pace and my head was empty, which is the whole point of running for me. Somewhere past the second mile, the trail forked. I didn't remember the sign mentioning a fork. I took the right one because it looked more used. 20 minutes later, the trail wasn't really a trail anymore. It was a suggestion. A game path, maybe. I stopped, checked my phone. No signal. The compass said I was heading southwest, which meant nothing to me because I hadn't paid attention to which way I came in. I made the classic mistake. I told myself the trail would open back up if I just kept going a little further. I've read enough survival stuff since to know you're supposed to stop and go back the second you're unsure. I didn't do that. I ran another 10 minutes, and by then, I couldn't have retraced my steps if you paid me. Here's the thing about being lost in real woods. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels stupid, like you left your wallet on the counter and can't figure out how you did it. My brain kept trying to tell me I was fine, and my body kept telling me I was already tired and thirsty and hadn't eaten enough that morning. I picked a direction, roughly downhill, and kept moving. My reasoning was that downhill eventually hits water, and water eventually hits a road. Took me over an hour before anything changed. What changed was the light. The canopy opened up ahead, and I could see sky through the trunks. I sped up. When you're lost, any change feels like a promise. It wasn't a road. It was a clearing. The clearing was maybe the size of 2 football fields, roughly oval, and there were buildings in it, 6 that I could count. Small ones, log construction, some with fieldstone chimneys, a couple with plank siding gone gray from decades of weather, roofs sagging. One had collapsed entirely into itself. The grass around them was tall and lumpy, like there used to be paths underneath, and the ground still remembered. I stopped at the tree line. I want to say I felt something wrong right away, but honestly, my first feeling was relief. Buildings meant people, or at least a road that once led here. I started walking toward the nearest one. Then I saw the smoke. One of the houses, near the middle of the clearing, had smoke coming out of the chimney. Thin, steady, gray, not a lot. The kind you get from a small fire that's been burning a while, and someone's keeping it low. I stood there for maybe a full minute just looking at it. Every other structure was clearly dead. Doors off hinges, windows gone, one just a pile of logs with a stovepipe sticking out. But this one, the middle one, had glass in the windows, or something behind the glass, and the roof was intact. And it had smoke. My first thought was hunters, a cabin someone maintained for deer season. That made sense. That was a normal explanation. I walked up to the front and knocked. Wood door, painted a long time ago, most of the paint gone. The knock sounded loud in a way it shouldn't have. Nothing answered. I waited, knocked again, called out, said I was a runner and I was lost and I just need directions to the nearest road. Nothing. I stepped back and looked at the windows. Every window on the front had a shooter closed over it from the inside. Not old broken shutters, solid ones, plank, closed tight. I walked around to the side. Same thing. 2 windows, both shuttered from within. I went around the back. There was a small door there, also closed, and a single window, also shuttered. I completed the circle. Every window on that house was shut against the outside, but smoke was still coming out of the chimney. I could hear the fire now that I was close. That soft, popping sound of wood burning low. I don't know how to explain what I felt standing there. It wasn't fear exactly. It was the feeling of being on the wrong side of a door that someone chose to close. I got the very clear sense that whoever was inside knew I was outside and had made a decision to stay quiet. I didn't try again. I didn't yell. I stepped back slow, and I walked back to the tree line the same way I came. I did not run. Something in me said, "Don't run yet." When I hit the trees, I turned around and looked one more time. The smoke was still going. Nothing had moved. No shutter had cracked open. But I was as sure as I've ever been about anything that someone was watching me leave. I got lucky on the way out. I could still see my own footprints in the soft spots. I followed them back uphill, took me almost 2 hours, and eventually the game path became a real trail again, and the trail took me back to the fork, and the fork took me to the pullout where my car was. It was almost 6 in the evening by then. I drove 20 minutes before I got signal, and even then, I didn't call anyone right away. I wanted to be home first. I wanted walls. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started searching. County name, state forest name, anything I could think of. It took a while, but I found it. A historical society page with grainy black and white photos. The place had been a logging community. Families lived there through the 20s and 30s, and it had been abandoned by the mid-1950s when the timber operation moved on. No one had lived there officially in almost 70 years. Monday, I called the state forest office. I told the woman on the phone exactly what I'd seen. The clearing, the structures, the one with smoke, the shutters. She was polite about it. Took my number, said someone would look into it when they had time. I figured that was the end of my part in it. About 2 weeks later, a ranger called me back. He said they'd sent a couple of guys in with the rough location from what I'd described. They'd found the clearing, they'd found the house. There was a man living in it. Older, the ranger said. Wouldn't tell me an exact age, but implied late 70s. He'd been living there a long time. Hunted, kept a garden in a cleared patch out back I hadn't seen. Knew the woods around that clearing better than anyone the ranger had ever met, in his words. He hadn't wanted to come out and talk to me, watched me through a gap in the shutter until I left. They didn't arrest him. There was nothing to arrest him for. He wasn't on posted land in a way that mattered, wasn't hunting out of season, wasn't bothering anyone. They lodged his presence in some file and left him where he was. The ranger told me all this in a tone that suggested he thought it was the right call. I still run. I don't run alone in unfamiliar woods anymore, and I always carry a real GPS now. I think about him sometimes, sitting by his low fire, hearing a stranger knock on a door that hasn't had a visitor in years, deciding to just wait it out. He'd probably done it before, he'll probably do it again, and the shooters will stay closed, and the smoke will keep going, and whoever knocks next will walk back into the trees the same way I did. I've been a bike courier in Chicago for 6 years, mostly Loop and River North, and by May 2021, I could pretty much do the route with my eyes closed. Papers, small packages, the occasional flash drive from a law firm that didn't trust email. The pandemic had thinned the traffic, but not the paperwork. If anything, there was more of it, because half the lawyers were still working from home, and the other half wanted originals hand-carried, like it was 1985. The company was small, 10 couriers, a dispatcher named Reggie, and the boss, who everyone called Mr. K. He ran the place out of a 2-room office on Wacker, above a sandwich shop. He was one of those guys who acted like the whole operation was held together by his personal willpower, which, honestly, it kind of was. He knew every client by name, every building's freight elevator schedule, every doorman who'd give you attitude. The morning it happened was a Tuesday, warm for May, low 60s, that Chicago wind that comes off the lake and cuts through your jacket even when the sun's out. I remember because I'd worn the lighter windbreaker and regretted it by the time I got to the office at 7. Reggie handed me the day's stack. 12 deliveries, all in the Loop, a couple in the West Loop, one in Streeterville, standard stuff. I loaded my bag in delivery order so I wouldn't have to dig. Then I signed the sheet, grabbed a coffee from the sandwich shop downstairs, and rolled out. First 6 deliveries went fine. Around 11, I stopped at a bench on the Riverwalk to eat the bagel I'd been carrying since 8, and that's when I felt it. I was reaching into the side pocket of my bag for my water bottle, and my hand hit something that shouldn't have been there, a padded envelope. Manila, the kind with bubble wrap inside. Heavy, way heavier than a regular document drop. I pulled it out and looked at it, chewing. No return address, no client sticker, no barcode, no tracking slip, just a handwritten line in the middle, black Sharpie, small tidy letters, Mr. K, 412 North Kenmore, apartment 3B. That was the boss's home address. I knew it because I'd dropped off his laptop there once when he was sick, back in February. Kenmore was up in Uptown, nowhere near any client I had that day. I sat there for a second with the bagel still in my mouth. The thing is, I load my own bag every morning. And I remember loading it that morning because I'd had to shuffle a West Loop package up front. There had been no manila envelope. I would have noticed the weight if nothing else. It felt like a hardcover book, maybe a little denser, not a laptop, not a brick, something in between. I turned it over, nothing on the back. The flap was taped down with clear packing tape, wrapped around twice, corners tucked. Whoever sealed it had taken their time. I thought about the office. Reggie had been at his desk when I came in, and I hadn't left my bag alone. Not really. I'd set it on the floor while I signed the sheet, but I was standing right next to it. Then I'd gone downstairs for coffee, and the bag was on my back the whole time, except when I was paying for the coffee, I'd unclipped the bag and set it on one of those little iron tables by the window because the strap was digging into my shoulder from the way I'd loaded it. The girl at the counter was slow. There was a line. I checked my phone. Maybe 2 minutes, 3 at the most. The bag was 6 feet away from me, and I wasn't looking at it. I tried to think if anyone had been near the tables. An older guy with a newspaper. A woman on a laptop. Normal weekday sandwich shop crowd. Nothing I'd have flagged. I put the envelope back in the side pocket and finished my bagel and did the rest of my route. I thought about opening it, of course I did. On the blue line back toward the office around 3, I sat with the bag between my knees and just stared at the pocket. But we have a rule. You don't open client mail. You don't shake it. You don't smell it. You don't hold it up to the light. If a package makes you uncomfortable, you take it to Mr. K. That's the rule. Reggie says it every time we hire someone new, so I didn't open it. I went back to the office. Reggie was on the phone when I came in. I waved the envelope at him and mouthed, "Mr. K," and he pointed at the back office and kept talking. Mr. K was at his desk with his reading glasses on, going through invoices. He looked up when I knocked on the door frame. "I found this in my bag this morning," I said. "I didn't put it there. It's got your name on it and your home address. No sender." I set it on his desk. He didn't reach for it right away. He just looked at it, then at me, then back at the envelope. "Where?" he said. "Where? What?" "Where in your bag?" "Side pocket, right side." He nodded slowly. Then he asked me to close the door. I closed it and stood there. He picked up the envelope with both hands, waited a little, the way you do when you're guessing what's inside a birthday present. Then he took a letter opener out of his top drawer and slit the tape along the flap. He didn't pull whatever was inside all the way out. He tilted the envelope, looked down into it, and held it that way for maybe 5 seconds. His face did something I'm not going to be able to describe well. It wasn't shock. It wasn't fear exactly either. It was more like the way my dad's face looked when the doctor called him about my grandmother, a face that already knows. He closed the envelope, folded the flap down, set it in his drawer, and slid the drawer shut. Then he looked up at me and said, "Thank you." That was it. No follow-up questions. No, "Did you see anyone?" No, "Are you okay?" Just "thank you," in a normal voice, like I'd brought him a coffee. I stood there for another second, waiting for something else, and it didn't come. So I said, "Okay," and left. I told Reggie on the way out that Mr. K seemed off, and Reggie said, "Mr. K had been off all week, and we left it at that. The next Monday, Mr. K wasn't in. Reggie said he was taking a couple personal days. On Wednesday, he still wasn't in, and there was an email from him to the whole staff saying he was stepping back from the business for family reasons, effective immediately, and that his deputy, a quiet guy named Dave who ran our billing side, would be taking over as of the 1st of the month. Short email, 2 paragraphs, signed with just his first name. I never saw him again. He didn't come by to clear out his office. Dave did it over a weekend. When I came in that Monday, the nameplate was gone from the door and Dave was sitting at the desk like he'd always been there. I asked Dave once, maybe 2 months later, if he'd heard from Mr. K. He said they'd talked on the phone a couple of times about paperwork and that Mr. K sounded fine. I asked if everything was okay with his family, and Dave just said, "I think so, yeah," in a way that made it clear the conversation was over. I still work there, 4 years now, same route more or less. Dave is a decent boss, the company's doing fine. I've thought about that envelope maybe once a week for 4 years. About who slid it into my bag in the 3 minutes I wasn't looking, and how they knew it would be me carrying it that day, and how they knew Mr. K's home address, and what a person can put inside a padded envelope that makes a man like that walk away from a business he built over 30 years and say thank you in a normal voice. I'm never going to know. That's the part I've made peace with, mostly. The call came in on a Tuesday around 6 in the morning, and Detective Ruiz sounded tired before he even said hello. A hiker's dog had dug up a bone off a fire road east of Estacada. He needed me out there before the news vans showed up. I've been doing forensic anthropology for 11 years. Most of what I get called out for turns out to be deer. Occasionally, a black bear paw, which people always mistake for a human hand. Real human remains in the woods are rare, and when they show up, they're almost always recent and messy. This one wasn't messy. That was the first thing I noticed. Ruiz met me at the trailhead in his county Bronco, holding 2 coffees. He handed me one without asking. We'd worked maybe 5 scenes together over the years. He was the kind of cop who let you do your job and didn't try to be helpful. It's about a quarter mile in, he said. Uniforms, strung tape. Dog's owner is in the ambulance. She's fine, just shook up. The trail bent north through second growth Douglas fir. April in Oregon is a specific kind of damp, the kind that soaks through Gore-Tex if you stand still long enough. My boots were making that sucking sound in the mud, and Ruiz was ahead of me, quiet the whole way. The scene was in a small clearing, maybe 15 feet across. A brown lab was tied to a tree at the edge, watching us. The hole the dog had dug was shallow, about 8 inches down, and I could see the top of a cranium poking up through the leaf litter. I set up my grid, photographed everything. Then I got on my knees and started brushing. The first body came up clean and slow. Adult. I could tell from the pelvis it was probably male. The bones were dry, chalky, no soft tissue left, no smell. Judging by the discoloration and the root growth through the ribs, I put it at somewhere between 8 and 15 years in the ground. Not fresh, not a missing hiker from last summer. The pose was the odd part, but not immediately. He was on his right side, knees drawn up almost to his chest, left arm folded across the ribcage, right arm under the head like a pillow. It looked peaceful, like someone had laid him down to sleep and then covered him up. I made a note. Bodies dumped in the woods usually don't look like that. Panicked killers throw, they don't arrange. Ruiz asked if I wanted him to call the coroner's van. I told him not yet. I wanted to expand the grid, check for personal effects, see if there was anything under the immediate layer. Standard procedure. I started sifting the soil about a foot out from the pelvis. 10 minutes in, my trowel hit something hard that wasn't a rock. It was another skull. I sat back on my heels and just looked at it for a second. Then I called Ruiz over. "Tell me you're kidding," he said. "Second one, right below the first, maybe 6 inches deeper." He crouched next to me, didn't say anything for a while. I widened the excavation. It took the rest of the morning. By noon, I had the second individual almost fully exposed, and I stopped eating the granola bar I'd been chewing on halfway through because my hands started feeling wrong. The second body was in the exact same pose. Right side, knees up, left arm across the ribs, right arm under the head. Adult, also probably male, though the pelvis was more ambiguous. This one was older, way older. I'd guess 20 to 30 years down, based on the mineralization and the way the smaller bones of the hands had already started to lose integrity. Ruiz was on his radio calling for more units and a second van. I heard him say, "possible serial," and then stop himself and say, "possible pattern," instead. I told myself I was being thorough. Any decent anthropologist would keep excavating until they hit sterile soil. That was the job. The third one was another 8 inches under the second. I found it around 3 in the afternoon when the light through the firs was getting long and yellow. My knees were killing me. I remember that specifically because I was thinking about my knees when my brush passed over the top of the third cranium, and for a second I thought I was seeing things. I wasn't. Right side, knees up, left arm across the ribs, right arm under the head. This one was the oldest. The bone was almost the color of the surrounding soil. Some of the vertebrae had partially fused with root systems. I'd need a lab to say for sure, but I was looking at something that had probably been in the ground since the 70s, maybe earlier. 3 people, stacked, each one placed identically, each one buried, and then years later, the ground opened again, and the next was laid on top in the same shape. Ruiz had gone very quiet. He was standing about 10 feet away, one hand on the back of his neck, the other holding his phone but not looking at it. He'd been a detective for something like 22 years. I'd never seen him look the way he looked right then. "This is copying," he said, finally. "Somebody was burying the next one the same way as the last one." I nodded. "That means whoever did the second one saw the first one," he said, "and whoever did the third one saw the second. Or they were told about it." He looked at me. Told by who? I didn't have an answer. We stood in that clearing until the light was gone and the portable floods came on. I watched them load the 3 sets, one at a time, into separate bags. One of the younger deputies threw up behind a tree and apologized about 6 times. The lab work took months. 3 adult males, all died of blunt force trauma to the back of the skull, roughly the same spot, roughly the same angle. None had ever been reported missing. Dental records went nowhere. The oldest was estimated to have died around 1974, the middle one around 1993, the youngest around 2011, 37 years apart. 3 men, 1 patch of dirt off a fire road in the middle of nowhere. The intervals ruled out a single killer working alone. Ruiz's math on that was simple. Even if somebody started at 18 in 1974, they'd have been in their mid-50s by 2011, which was possible, but it didn't explain the pose. You can't teach a pose from memory across 19 years unless you're looking at a picture, and there was no picture. Nobody knew this grave existed. Nobody except the person putting bodies in it. Unless there was more than one person, unless somebody had been showing somebody else. Ruiz worked that case for another 1.5 years before he retired. Nothing came of it. No suspect, no confession, nothing matched in any database. The county opened it as a triple homicide and, as far as I know, it's still open. I still work. I still get called out to holes in the woods. Most of them are still there, but I think about that clearing more than I should. Not because of what we found, because of the part that stayed unanswered. Somebody, 3 separate times across almost 40 years, walked into those woods carrying a dead man and knew exactly how to lay him down. Somebody knew the pose. And somebody, at some point, taught it.